This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Let's pause and take a moment to talk about something very important. Life has its pressures for everyone, and we often carry the immense weight of expectation to never show weakness, to hide our true feelings, and believe that asking for support somehow makes us less of a person. But bottling things up isn't the answer. It can often lead to feeling down, burnout, or other unhealthy habits. We want to normalize the idea that it's okay to struggle. Real strength actually comes from opening up about what you are carrying and doing something about it so that you can be at your best for yourself and everyone in your life. If you're feeling the weight of the world, or even if things just feel a bit off, I can't stress enough the value of talking to someone. It could be a friend, a loved one, or a therapist. We here at This Week Explained believe that therapy can be incredibly valuable. Whether you've been in therapy personally or not, the broader benefits are clear. It's so helpful for learning positive coping skills, understanding how to set healthy boundaries, and it really empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it's so important to remember that therapy isn't just for those who've experienced combat or major trauma. It's a tool for anyone looking to improve their mental well-being and navigate life's challenges. That's why we're thrilled to talk about BetterHelp. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it clearly resonates with users, boasting an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars based on over 1.7 million client reviews. It's also incredibly convenient. You can connect with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy schedule. And you can even switch therapists at any time if you feel it's not the right fit. And here's something special for our listeners. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp is offering our listeners 10% off their first month. What are you waiting for? Talk it out with BetterHelp. Once again, our listeners get 10% off their first month by going to betterhelp.com/thisweek. That's BetterHelp.com/thisweek. Tired of feeling overwhelmed by the headlines? Want to truly understand the why behind the global chaos? Then you are in the right place. Welcome to This Week Explained, your weekly deep dive into the most complex and impactful stories shaping our world. I'm Tiana, and joining me as always is Kervin. Before we jump into the crucial developments of the week, a quick favor. If you want to ensure you never miss an episode, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast platform. It literally takes 2 seconds and keeps you instantly updated. And if you are getting value from what we are doing here, a simple rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify helps us reach more curious minds like yours. And don't forget the new interactive comments on Spotify. It's a fantastic way to engage directly with the show and other listeners, extending the conversation beyond the broadcast. You can also find more fantastic podcasts like ours by visiting leonmedianetwork.com, part of the awesome Leon Media Network. This week, we're diving into the latest from Ukraine and Gaza, the official directive of military action against the cartels in Mexico, and joint exercises between China and Russia. We have a lot to get to this week, so buckle up. We are going to start with the recent developments surrounding the war in Ukraine, which appear to be heading toward a critical moment. We have seen a flurry of diplomatic activity involving the United States, Russia, and Ukraine with a potential summit on the horizon. So, Kervin, can you please break it down? What is going on? What's the most recent news for this?
Yeah, so the talk all across the globe this week is that planned meeting that you talked about. That is a planned meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. That is scheduled for August 15th, and it is going to be in Alaska, which is an interesting development in and of itself, with Russia talking about wanting to take back Alaska. So that was interesting to me. Now, this summit announced by President Trump on Truth Social is intended to discuss the future of the war in Ukraine. Now, obviously, this has sparked a lot of conversation and concern, especially regarding Ukraine's role, or I should say lack thereof, in the talks here for a united peace front.
It seems like President Zelensky and his team are very aware of this possibility. Like, I understand he has been in touch with several European leaders, including the UK Prime Minister, to discuss the need for a lasting peace. So what is the Ukrainian position on these talks and a potential ceasefire?
Look, Ukraine's in a very, very difficult position right now. And President Zelensky has been clear that any solution has got to include Ukraine. It cannot be made without the consent of the other side of this, of Ukraine. And he's repeatedly stated that Ukraine's constitution actually prohibits giving up territory. So he has no say in that. The constitution is there. So he is concerned that Russia will try to reduce the discussions to these impossible demands of territorial discussions and capitulation of Ukrainian territory. Now, the former Ukrainian prime minister has even warned against making any territorial concessions. That includes Crimea, saying that giving up land is only going to encourage Putin to press for more land.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. That seems to be what Putin's doing, is he just keeps pushing, rewriting, extending the boundaries out farther and farther. I mean, I guess the big question is whether it makes a lot of sense to President Trump. I mean, we know this conflict has been ongoing for over 3.5 years with significant casualties on both sides. And President Trump has recently hinted at a solution that involves some form of territorial exchange. So what do we know about this potential deal?
Hell, I mean, according to reports, the White House is exploring a proposal that would see Russia keep the Donbass region as well as Crimea. That's an area that Russia's controlled since 2014, I believe. And then it partially controls some of the Donbass region since the most recent invasion. Now, in return, Russia would then give up the Kherson and the Zaporizhzhia regions, which it also partially occupies at this moment. And look, this proposal, even giving that land, Russia would say giving it back to Ukraine, but allowing Ukraine to retain those two regions, it's still politically difficult for Ukraine to accept. This has been given that public stance and that constitutional stance on territorial integrity. This is very similar to a proposal that Putin himself reportedly made to the U.S. envoy. I guess that was a couple weeks ago that he made that.
And believe it or not, this is where the dynamic gets very interesting. President Trump suggested he would be open to meeting with Putin first, and even stated that Putin does not need to meet with Zelensky before they can meet, that's a weird thing to say. Why not? If he's willing to do it, why not? This seems to be a point of friction, given Ukraine's desire to be involved. Has there been any indication that Zelensky could be included in the summit?
Yeah, and there is some confusion here because there's been some conflicting information on that front. Now, the meeting is currently planned as a bilateral one. So President Trump, President Putin, a senior White House official has mentioned that the planning is fluid and that Zelensky's involvement could happen in some capacity. That is still possible that he could be there. Now, Trump has also suggested that a trilateral meeting could be a possibility down the line, just not this coming week. But President Putin has stated he's not ready to meet with Zelensky. And he claims the conditions for such a meeting have not yet been met.
What are those conditions? Do you know? Like what exactly?
To capitulate on all of the land that Russia controls now, to stop attacking Russian land, which Ukraine continues to do. And then to cede control of Ukraine to Russia. So, I mean, yeah.
Right. Okay.
As with anything with Putin, right? It's non-negotiables on both sides.
Okay. Well, what I would like to know is, what is your overall assessment of the significance of this meeting in Alaska?
I think it is a pivotal moment, getting two world leaders in a room together, but it is highly unlikely to produce a lasting peace deal. The fundamental conflict between Russia's demands and Ukraine's position as it currently states, this creates an irreconcilable chasm. Russia's primary goal is to legitimize its territorial gains, while Ukraine's goals are to secure its borders and get a guarantee against any future aggression by Russia. So a deal that rewards Russian aggression, that's going to set a dangerous precedent. This dangerous precedent is something that Europe is actually trying to prevent, because that means Russia is going to continue to move western into more European countries. And European leaders, rightfully so, fear that Trump may prioritize a quick deal over a durable and just peace. a joint statement between Ukraine and Western Europe, emphasizing that, quote, the path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine, end quote. That is a direct response to this fear.
Well, I mean, they're not wrong. How can they make a lasting peace between Ukraine and Russia without Ukraine being there?
Right. The only way to do that is that Ukraine has completely crumbled, and there is, we're still at a stalemate here. Neither side has the edge. So you have to include Ukraine in these talks.
I mean, that's better than hearing that Russia has the edge and that, more than likely Ukraine will have to capitulate to their demands. I mean, that's...
Yeah, and some analysts say that no matter what happens, Russia has lost this conflict. They're just because of
that.
Yeah. Tell any country that they've lost a war, but the sheer size of losses on the Russian side and the impact to its economy from a civilian standpoint is so far greater than anything. Even if they get all of the eastern territory that they want, it would still be deemed historically as a loss.
Okay, so what do we think the actual purpose of this summit is, if not to negotiate peace? Is it just for show?
Yeah, I mean, well, from an intelligence perspective, the summit's primary function is likely to be Russia, more specifically Putin, testing Western unity. So it's not a genuine peace negotiation. It really just can't be, because we don't have that Ukrainian presence. So Putin's
do you think Trump is aware that this is Putin testing our unity?
I don't. I don't. So I think what we've seen over the last month or two, with the way that now Trump is speaking about Putin in a different capacity than he has during the election and early on in his administration, is quite different. And so a man that he once thought he knew, I don't think he really understands. And so it's much like when Putin went all around the world telling people he's not going to invade, and people believe that. We're in this same cycle where Trump doesn't understand that. He thinks if he can just get a peace deal, if he can get Russia to stop and Ukraine to agree to something, that he's won, right? And so
we didn't believe it.
No, we didn't. No, world leaders did. Sorry.
Yeah,
we said it from the very beginning. Like when he talked to the French president, right? It was like, look, he's lying to you. And the French president came out and was like, hey, I talked to the guy, I looked him in the eyes, and so I trust him. It's like,
he looked him in the eyes.
I think something similar is going to happen here, where President Trump says, I looked him in the eyes, I trust this man. This is a man that everyone trusts, and yet he does the exact opposite of what he tells people. I trust Putin, too, to do the opposite of what he tells the public he is going to do.
Right.
While also understanding when he tells the Russian people what he is going to do, he's being quite honest with them. So I read very much into his public statements domestically, more so than I do his international public statements. I also think that his willingness to meet Trump reflects a strategic effort to regain international legitimacy. He wants to bypass a unified Western alliance. Now, he correctly assesses that Ukraine's military and economic situation makes it vulnerable, and that Ukraine is under a lot of pressure. They are under intense pressure, even domestically, to end the fighting. So by meeting with the U.S. president directly, Putin is now trying to elevate his status. He aims to create a rift between the U.S., Ukraine, and Western Europe. And the demands for territorial concessions on either side are non-negotiable. We know that. Taking all of what Russia holds as Russian territory is central to Putin's stated war aims. He said it from the very beginning. And this is probably, more importantly, his domestic political narrative. I want that land to tell my people we won.
So the core issue is not just about territory, but about the principles of international law and European security.
So from a Western European perspective, you're actually spot on there. The most critical issue for Ukraine is a guarantee against future Russian aggression. A peace deal that forces Ukraine to cede territory without a robust Western-backed security assurance, like Article 5 from NATO, that would be seen as a prelude to a future invasion. We know that's what Putin wants to do. So Ukraine and its European allies understand that Russia would use a ceasefire to rearm, regroup, and then prepare for this secondary offensive that's going to go to Kyiv. So that's why any lasting peace has to be built on the principle that Russia is not going to and that they cannot move an inch further west. But this requires a credible deterrent. That credible deterrent is likely in the form of what I just talked about, that NATO-style security guarantee from Europe, but also from the United States.
Well, the world is holding its breath as we await the outcome of the Trump-Putin Summit in Alaska. But while the eyes of many are on that conversation, a different conflict is taking a sharp and dangerous turn. And of course, I am talking about the Middle East, where Israel's plan to take control of Gaza City has completely upended the dynamics of the war. I mean, I called it from the beginning, to be perfectly honest. Caravan, the headlines have been coming in fast and furious, and it seems everyone, from world leaders to humanitarian organizations, is reacting to this one move.
It really has. From the United Nations to key European allies, there's been a significant global response to this. The international community is not just watching, they are actively speaking out against this plan by Netanyahu.
Okay, well, let's start with some of these reactions. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called Israel's plan a dangerous escalation, warning of catastrophic consequences. This isn't a subtle warning, is it?
Yeah, look, the whole situation with Israel and the UN, this is a classic case of like the cornered cat effect. The UN has been incredibly vocal to the point of being a bit on the nose about its desire for Israel to end its occupation of Palestinian territories. Some of that language even suggesting the removal of the Israeli state. Now, that kind of messaging can be a huge motivator for escalation. It makes a leader, especially one like Netanyahu, who's already feeling the pressure domestically, it makes him want to double down, makes him want to become more aggressive in his tactics. It's much like cornering a cat. You're going to get a much more pronounced and probably unwise reaction from what you're cornering. And while Netanyahu is seemingly making a series of strategic missteps, that's my opinion. I think these are strategic missteps. The UN's concern is not without merit. From their perspective, this move to take control of Gaza City is a dangerous gamble. It could push an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis beyond the point of no return.
And it's not just the UN. We have seen strong reactions from some of Israel's closest partners, like Germany. In a significant move, Germany's chancellor stated that they would halt the export of any military equipment to Israel that could be used in Gaza. Germany has always maintained a special responsibility toward Israel. So what does this decision signal?
I think you hit on something, on a really interesting point.
I mean, I get why they feel like...
Yeah, I was going to say, they haven't always maintained a special responsibility toward Israel and the Israeli people, but I was going to leave that one alone as to not derail the podcast.
Yeah, history,
yeah. Sometimes we look back on history. So, yeah, it's an interesting point about their motivations. Since the end of World War II, since the start of the State of Israel, Germany has taken into a special relationship with Israel because of their actions previously. Now, because of their actions in the present day, that is motivating them to change their relationship with Israel. So while Germany's decision to halt arms exports is a powerful signal of concern, it's not just an act of diplomatic principle. This is a politically savvy move there at home. Germany is Israel's second largest arms supplier. And so, look, it's not a symbolic gesture. They're not saying we're going to do this, but we don't even really give them that much anyway. So praise us on the international stage and domestically, while we know that we're not really doing that much. It is a significant and a practical consequence for Israel. But the public outrage over Israel's actions since the October 23rd attacks by Hamas has put pressure on the German government domestically. Many of their citizens feel their country is complicit in what they see as acts of genocide. So, by pausing these exports, the German government is not only expressing its disapproval on the world stage, it's also responding to a frustrated domestic audience. This isn't an act of self-sacrifice. It's a calculated move by the German government. For Germany, getting on what they see as the right side of history at this moment also happens to be a political win for the current government. And the action says, in no uncertain terms, that Israel's new military objective has crossed a line, one that goes against their shared values and international law, and they're willing to back that up with more than just a stern talking to Netanyahu.
The European Union as a whole has also weighed in. The EU Council President Antonio Costa said the plan must have consequences for EU-Israel relations. This sounds like a united front from Europe.
Yeah, it really does. Look, you are starting to see a united front from Europe to include the acceptance or possibility of acceptance of the Palestinian state, right? So the EU is suggesting this is not just a diplomatic disagreement, but an action that could alter the nature of their relationship with Israel. They're moving from words of concern to a position where they are considering tangible repercussions. And, seeing or accepting a Palestinian state is a tangible repercussion to Israel, because if they were to attack Palestine, Europe would then be led to come in and do something towards Israel. So it's a very serious step within international relations.
Another interesting angle here is the split in views between the UK and the US on this topic. The UK Prime Minister has publicly criticized Israel's plan and even pledged to recognize a Palestinian state in the future if certain conditions are not met. This led to a very pointed response from the US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who told Starmer to sit this one out and made some very controversial comments about UK leadership during World War II. Who gives it? That was during World War II. Why is he talking crap about the leadership back then?
I know, but it's unsurprising coming from Mike Huckabee.
All the low blows, and it's just so immature. I don't know. It's embarrassing.
Sometimes it can be embarrassing if you want to bring some opinions into it. I'll lay off of that one. But we're not seeing diplomacy win in this one. But what we are seeing is a significant divergence between two key Western allies. And it's not just some polite disagreement on policy. It was direct and personal attacks on a foreign leader. So it suggests a very strong, almost unwavering belief within the current U.S. administration in Israel's approach. A conviction so strong that they are willing to publicly rebuke a close ally. Now, within the Trump administration, we've seen they don't shy away from publicly making these proclamations. So it's not that surprising, right? Now, this kind of public friction historically is very rare. So it speaks volumes about the ideological alignment that's at play right now. And honestly, like I said, it's not entirely shocking, especially when you consider the theological and political leanings of figures like Mike Huckabee, also within his influence within the Trump administration. This all-in support for Israel, which is often tied to a belief in the necessity of a Jewish state to usher in what Mike Huckabee would say is a second coming of the Messiah. It's become a very powerful force recently in U.S. politics. Now, while such public rebukes might be diplomatically clumsy, I would call them foolish. They are perfectly in character for this administration, and an administration that holds these specific views. So it's a clear signal that for this White House, the support for Israel isn't just about geopolitics, it is deeply ideological.
And to add to that, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also spoke about a disagreement between the U.S. and the U.K., and he was very clear that the U.S. has no plans to recognize a Palestinian state. That seems to be a key point of contention.
It is, again, not surprising, right? Coming from J.D. Vance. So the U.S. and the U.K. may share some ultimate objectives for the region, one of which is to stop Iran from sending proxies and creating violent extremist organizations, but the two clearly differ on the means to achieve them. The U.S. sees Israel as the main force to stop terrorism in the region. Now, the U.K. seems to be using the recognition of a Palestinian state as a potential diplomatic lever. The U.S. does not see it that way, and this difference in approach is a significant factor in how each country handles the situation. It shows a break in what has traditionally been a very unified position between the two countries.
And what about the internal situation in Israel? The Prime Minister's office released a statement detailing 5 principles for ending the war, which includes their typical things like the disarmament of Hamas and the return of all hostages. And at the same time, we have a former Israeli prime minister saying that this new plan will not save the hostages and will only endanger lives.
Yeah, and you make a very important point here. So it kind of shows that there is not a monolithic view, even within Israel, for how to go about this. So those comments reflect a practical concern that this military escalation will be counterproductive to the goal of rescuing the hostages. And that is the major priority for the Israeli public. Now, it suggests that Netanyahu's plan may be more a result of internal political pressures, that being to maintain his government. And he's doing that more so than the universally agreed upon military or agreed upon intelligence strategy.
And of course, the final piece of the puzzle is Hamas's response, because they are the other player here. They have said that they are ready for a comprehensive deal to release all hostages in exchange for a ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli troops. They also warned that a takeover of Gaza City would come at a heavy price. So what do you have to say about that?
Let's be honest here. Look, the endless back and forth of this is just giving everyone whiplash at this point. It's just a geopolitical maneuver where one side takes an extreme position that prompts the other side to say, all right, now we're ready to talk, right? So Israel says, we're going to take over Gaza City. So now Hamas says, we're ready to talk, so that they can publicly show, look, we're ready to reach a deal. It's Israel who can't. And then Hamas will take an extreme position and Israel will say, no, look, we're ready to talk, right? We go back and forth, and it's utterly ridiculous to think that a lasting peace is going to emerge without one side having the upper hand here. Now, Israel's declaration of a full-scale invasion of Gaza is a clear attempt to force Hamas's hand, and in response, the international community is squeezing Israel by withdrawing their support that we talked about earlier. Now, in the middle of this all, you have Hamas essentially saying that we're going to come to the table, but if you choose that option, that's going to be very costly for you. They're not just speaking to Israel, they're trying to sway international opinion and apply more pressure on Israel. They want Israel to reconsider this. Now, right now, everyone is just trying to make the other side blink first.
It seems that this decision by the Israeli government has created a serious ripple effect, not only in the region, but among its key allies. So speaking of geopolitical tensions and the difficult dynamics with key allies, we are seeing a similar, though very different situation brewing much closer to home. When we come back, we are going to pivot from the Middle East to North America and discuss the escalating situation between the United States and Mexico over drug cartels. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners. Before the break, we spoke about the ripple effects of international policy and how tensions can arise even among the closest of allies. We are now turning our attention to one of those very situations, this time in our own hemisphere. This conversation has been shaped by the Trump administration, which, in February, officially designated several Latin American drug gangs, including Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, as global terrorist organizations. So, Carvin, from your perspective, what does that designation actually mean in a practical sense?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because I know we spoke about this when it happened in February. It's always good to give a refresher. Anytime you're briefing a commander on anything, you want to start with that refresher, get it fresh in their brain again. And this designation is not just a label. It is an official authority for the U.S. government. It allows the administration to use all elements of American power to go after these groups. And we are talking about not just the military, but intelligence agencies, the Department of Defense, obviously using the military, but also using other tools of statecraft. Basically, it elevates the fight against these cartels from a law enforcement issue to a national security one.
So it's not a rhetorical move, it's an operational one. And this designation seems to be the foundation for some other actions the administration has reportedly taken. I understand the president has signed a directive to begin using military force against these groups.
That is what's being reported right now. Sources indicate a directive has been signed, though they are quick to clarify that military action does not appear to be imminent at this moment. What this directive seems to do is lay out the options for the Pentagon. So it is a planning document. It's giving the military a formal basis to prepare for direct operations. Within the DoD, I'm sure other agencies and other departments do this as well, but all I can do is speak for what the DoD does because I've been in writing these directives and these instructions. So there are what are known as directives, there are instructions, there are publications, field manuals. These are tangible things that have meaning to them. A DoD directive establishes a broad policy, which is most likely what happened in February. A DoD instruction provides the specific procedures and a uniform plan of action for carrying out the policy set forth in a directive. So I think what the media, once again, is missing here is that this is more in line with an instruction from an official sense, and that actually tracks with the timeline of implementing these documents.
All right, well, moving away from the legalese of these types of documents, what might those operations look like? Because I think when people hear military action, they immediately think of ground troops. I know that's what pops into my mind. Is that what we're talking about here?
Obviously, military action. Yeah, that's probably going to be the first thing that pops in anybody's mind, rightfully so, because typically that's what it involves. But in this case, not necessarily. This is where the nuance is really important. The reporting suggests the options are varied. So one U.S. official mentioned the possibility of the U.S. Navy conducting drug interdiction operations at sea. Other reports speak of targeted military raids. This is a significant difference from a full-scale ground invasion. Targeted military raids are going to be specialized operations, specialized tactical units that go in. The military has also been increasing airborne surveillance from ISR, intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance assets. They are collecting intel and surveilling the cartels. So they are already active in a support role right now.
So we're not talking about U.S. tanks rolling into a Mexican city, but perhaps a special forces team or a naval ship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that distinction is critical, not just for the U.S., but also for Mexico's response. Now, Mexico's president has been very clear. She has stated the U.S. military will not be entering Mexican territory. She's been very forceful. She says, I want to quote her here, there is not going to be an invasion. That is ruled out, absolutely ruled out, in a quote. Now, her government was informed of the directive or the instruction, but she claims it had nothing to do with U.S. military personnel operating on Mexican soil.
And this is not the first time she has pushed back on this, right? She has previously said that any such action would be a violation of Mexico's sovereignty. It sounds like there is a real tension brewing between the U.S. desire to go after these cartels and Mexico's national sovereignty.
There is. And look, this is a recurring theme now in U.S. Mexico relations. Mexico has long viewed certain U.S. actions, even those that may seem to be helpful, even to to Mexico, the government, and the people. They see this as challenges to its own sovereignty. It's a very sensitive topic. It also brings up legal questions. A number of legal experts have raised concerns about how U.S. military action on foreign soil against these groups would square with both domestic and international law.
So, to bring it all together, the U.S. administration has created the legal and administrative framework to use military force against cartels, but Mexican leadership has drawn a very clear line in the sand regarding military operations on its territory. I mean, honestly, the nerve we have to be laying this framework to where we can go into Mexico after cartels. That's kind of wild. I mean, is this an accurate read?
Yeah, you're spot on. It's a very accurate read. Now, the situation is complicated further by the fact that the two countries are actually cooperating in some very significant ways already. The U.S. ambassador to Mexico, that's Ronald Johnson, celebrated the collaboration between the two leaders. He noted that fentanyl seizures at the border are down by more than a half. Now, border crossings are also down. So on one hand, we see successful collaboration. And on the other, because of the threat of military action, there is a significant disagreement here.
I wonder if, fentanyl seizures at the border are down because cartels are finding other ways to smuggle it into the country that doesn't include the U.S.-Mexico border.
So I would think of it now. You'd have to trust the reporting on this, and some of that is coming from the Trump administration, so take that as you will. But there is increased fentanyl movement across the northern border, so Canada and the U.S. So what we're seeing is this is not just a cartel, a Mexican cartel or Latin American cartel issue. This is a China issue, right? And that's really where this started when Trump was increasing tariffs on China to stop this movement of fentanyl.
But remember, they just sent the ingredients.
Right.
They didn't send the product; they just sent the ingredients.
Which
and
is legal.
it's not their fault what is done with these ingredients.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that insightful breakdown. This is a genuinely complex issue, and it's valuable to get analysis that goes beyond what we see in the headlines and on social media.
Always my pleasure.
Let's now shift our focus to the Indo-Pacific region. We've been discussing how a country projects its power and the friction that can cause with its neighbors. On a much larger scale, a similar dynamic is playing out between global powers. Like last week, a major joint naval exercise between Russia and China concluded in the Sea of Japan, sparking a lot of debate in the media about its significance. So now that the drills are over, what have we learned and what have been the developments since?
Well, you're talking about Maritime Interaction 2025 and Joint Sea 2025 drills. That's what they're called. And I say they're a significant show of force between the two countries. Now, the exercise lasted 5 days. It focused on some very specific and on some very telling scenarios. We saw the two navies simulate attacks on an adversarial submarine and an amphibious ship, and this included a Russian Il-38 and a Chinese Y-8 maritime patrol aircraft working together to track and destroy a mock enemy submarine. We can all understand where that enemy submarine may be coming from, knowing a shared enemy of those two countries. They also used naval guns to fire at a simulated enemy landing ship.
So they're not just playing pirates sailing around together.
Not one of the astute observations. No.
Okay, so they weren't playing pirates. They were practicing very specific coordinated maneuvers against a common threat. So, what was the third component of the exercise? I remember reading about a rescue mission or something.
Yeah, that's correct. So they also conducted a submarine rescue rehearsal in Peter the Great Bay. So what happened here is a Russian submarine, the Volkov, simulated an emergency by descending to the bottom of that bay, and a Chinese rescue ship then responded. It launched a submersible to dock with the submarine and evacuate the crew. Now, following that, a Russian rescue ship performed a similar drill with a Chinese submarine. This part of the exercise is a bit interesting because it shows a desire for interoperability and a willingness to share expertise on what I consider a very technical level.
That is quite an advanced level of cooperation. You mentioned that they were practicing against a, quote, common threat, end quote. The timing of these drills seemed noteworthy, especially with the U.S. president making comments about deploying submarines in the region. So, was that a coincidence?
That's always difficult to say for certain, but I like to read between the lines here. Now, these specific drills are part of an annual series of exercises, but the timing of the simulated submarine takedown certainly coincided with Trump's public announcement on Truth Social. Now, whether that was intentional or not is a matter of interpretation, but it does highlight the heightened tensions and the perceived military buildup in the region.
And now, with the drills concluded, they aren't heading home, are they?
No, they're actually not heading home. According to reports from Interfax, which is Russia's official news agency, the Russian and Chinese ships are forming a new task group to conduct a joint patrol in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, this move follows other joint air patrols the two countries have conducted since 2019, and it reinforces the idea that this is a long-term strategic partnership.
So, in a sense, the naval drills were a prelude to this more sustained presence in the region. So, what does this mean in the broader context of global power dynamics, especially with China's naval expansion?
The joint patrol is just another step in what appears to be a coordinated effort. Now, from a strategic perspective, it is a clear signal. Russia's chief of staff stated in 2022 that these exercises were a response to the buildup of U.S. military potential in the Asia-Pacific. Now, for China, it's an opportunity to project power and demonstrate its growing capabilities as a, quote, blue water, end quote, navy. Blue water navy is a powerful maritime force that can easily operate globally. That's what they want to be seen as. Now, by working with Russia, it adds a layer of experience and a clear message of shared strategic interest. It moves beyond a simple partnership and into a more integrated military presence on the cusp of a possible large-scale conflict coming up very soon in this region.
It sounds like we are seeing the practical application of the no-limit strategic partnership they signed before the invasion of Ukraine. It's not just a diplomatic agreement, but one with real military implications.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just a piece of paper. It is being translated into tangible military cooperation, from drills that practice specific combat scenarios to a sustained joint presence in a key strategic region.
Well, that gives us a lot to think about over the next week. So thank you, Kervin, for breaking that down for us. We will continue to monitor this very closely. Is there anything else you want to discuss?
That's all I have, unless you have anything.
I just wanted to apologize for us not putting out an episode last week. There was a lot of traveling going on, and we just couldn't find the time.
We tried. We definitely.
Oh yeah, we had it in the schedule that we were going to record on last Monday, but it just couldn't be squeezed in. There was no way.
No way.
So thank you for being patient.
That goes into this.
Huh?
I said there's a lot that goes into making these episodes. So it usually derails it.
It's kind of a pain these days to do these.
Well, being separate and then
and then time difference, and it takes a lot of us to coordinate our schedules because we are on very, very, very different time zones. So anyway. Thank you for being patient and sticking around with us. Yeah, that's all I really had to say. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, no, thanks for
You good?
bringing that up. I am good.
I always like to apologize whenever we don't, because I mean, it used to be a lot easier to do this.
Yeah. I mean, there was a point where we were in the same room together. Made it very easy.
Yeah.
I think also it was like we had 3 years was it 3 years? Of consistency of like, okay, this is when we're going to do it. We got into a rhythm and this whole thing just up.
Yeah.
And
Our rhythm has been, our rhythm has been disrupted. We can't, we're trying though. We're trying really hard. So anyways, and that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for listening. Right?
yeah, thank you for listening. Smash the like button, share, comment, review, all of those things. Don't smash the like button.
Yeah, don't do that. In this
Just
economy,
in this
you wanna-
economy, how can you?
yeah, come on.
I was
Thank
just
you.
watching the video of the guy that pretends to be an influencer around his wife. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, you sent it to me.
Oh, okay. It makes me laugh so much because I just pictured doing that to you and how
I would be doing
frustrated you would get.
I would be doing the exact same thing that his wife does. I would be walking ahead of you, pretending like I don't know you, turning around, going the opposite direction, telling you to shut up, all those things.
Don't you dare. That's what you would do.
I would just turn around and leave. I
True.
would leave you
Very
there.
true.
But anyways, okay. Thank you for listening to This Week Explained. We hope you found it both informative and engaging. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. For more in-depth coverage of these stories and more, be sure to follow us on social media at This Week Explained.
Tiana, thank you so much. And until next week, stay safe out there.